Okay, as you can see, we have this big open space right here, and my wife wants a console table. So I got on Pinterest and I found what's called the X console farm table. Pretty simple build. They have a tutorial, but I'm going to show you a couple of things on there I think maybe need a little bit more explanation. I'm going to do a video on it, start to finish, and I think it'll be a little easier to build. Let me show you a couple of things. Kind of need you to use your imagination for a second. So close your eyes and do a little Dreamweaver. Okay, nice work. We did it. The table's here. All right. So here's a couple things.
Okay, I'm actually going to hold off on the table for a second, and I'm going to go through the shopping list with you real quick. Here's 3 8-foot long 2x4s. Also, take a look at the grain pattern on these. See how they're similar? I take a little bit of extra time when I'm picking the lumber to make sure that my pieces are relatively close together. It's just going to give you a better look in the end because we're going to use stain, not paint. So that grain is going to show up. So take a little bit of extra time and pick fairly close grain patterns. You'll need 6 2x2s at 8 feet. I actually purchased 12. I'm going to be building 2 tables, and I wanted to buy them in that bulk strap like that because typically when you do that, they're all cut off the same piece of lumber, so you know you're going to get very close grain patterns. This is the 3 2x6s at 8 feet, and you can see again I spent a little bit extra time picking some close grain. I got like a nice kind of a deeper red in the center, and then it kind of fades out to the blonde wood on the edges there. And then the last thing you need is 2 1x12s. Now, there's lots of different ways you can get these. You can actually buy pre-cut 1-inch by 12-inch shelves, but what I did was I bought a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and then I just ripped it at 12-inch length, but whatever's easiest for you. Okay, so that's all we need for lumber, and I'll put in the description a full shopping list, and I'll include the wood screws and everything else that we need to complete this project. Well, let's get started on it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 12 2x2s at 30 inches. These are going to be used as part of the frame. You can see once I've got them cut, I'm just lining them out, and I'm going to do the same thing with the grain patterns. I want to make sure that only one side is truly going to show. So I want to make sure that I bury any of the blemishes inside the table where you're not going to be able to see them. So all I'm going to do is go through and pick out the best sides, make sure I've got all like patterns. Once those 2x2s are cut, then you just sand away on them. Sand the edge is going to be showing. I like to kind of round over the edges that are going to be visible. So I take my sander, I'll put it on this angle right here, and all I do is just soften up that edge. You can use a router if you want. It's pretty simple with the sander. And then I sand the edges of them, and I'll show you why I do that.
Okay, so I went through all the dramatics there just because I wanted to show you a couple things on the table now that it's finished. It's just a little easier to explain this way. When I was sanding these 2x2s, I was talking about rounding over the edges. The reason I was doing that is because now that it's together, you can see it's a nice flush joint right here where the 2x2 meets the 2x4. If I didn't round that over, there would actually be a little bit of an awkward gap. So this is a 2x2 that hasn't been sanded. And I'm going to put these up here flush and set it there. And I'm going to show you something that you can't quite tell from this angle, but I'm going to move my camera over. And you can see now that it kind of overhangs that 2x4 a little bit. The 2x4 kind of rounds over, and then my 2x2 rounds in. But without that here, it just looks a little sloppy. So it's not that big of a deal, but there are 6 of these 2x2s on this side. So that means there's going to be 12 of these joints here that just don't quite sit flush. So add them all together, and it doesn't look as good as taking the time to round over the edges and get a nice clean joint there.
Okay, here's step number 2. This is probably the most difficult step of this entire table. I'm going to take these 2x2s and I'm going to cut 60-degree angles on each end at 22.5 inches. So the first thing I do is just cut a 60-degree cut on the 2x2. Once I've made that cut, I'm going to take my tape measure, go to the longest point, and I'm going to pull down 22.5 inches. At 22.5, I make a pencil mark, and I do another 60-degree cut out from that pencil mark. That's going to give me the perfect size. You can see my 60-degree angles are opposite one another. The next step is the small 2x2s. These ones are going to be at 11.25, so the first cut 60 degrees. I'll pull down 11.25 inches, and then I'll reset my miter to 30 degrees and cut out from 11.25 at 30 degrees. I need 2 of those for each side, so a total of 4 at 11.25 and 2 at 22.5. And you can see for me, once I make one cut, I usually just set it on top of the other one, pull my pencil mark, and then duplicate the cuts off of it. You can remeasure it if you want, whatever you want to do. Okay, this project does require actual pocket holes. So this is a pocket hole drill. You can see it has a little Allen wrench set where I can set the depth on what I'm going to cut at. And this is the pocket hole jig. You can buy these at Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, whatever. This is the cheapest version of it, is the one I have. They have much better, much more expensive pocket hole jigs, but this is a pretty simple one and it works fine. So all I'm going to do is take one of my 2x2s, make sure I've got the end that I want exposed on the other side. So this is where my pocket holes are going to obviously go inside the table. So I'm going to line it up. This one actually cuts 2, but I'm only on a 2x2. You only have enough room for 1. So I'm just going to center up one hole, tighten that thing down, and then grab my drill and start making a ton of pocket holes. So on those 12, 30 inch 2x2s, you need a pocket hole on each end of them. Okay, I'm going to jump forward in the video for a second just to show you how actually sinking one of these pocket holes. I'm using a pocket hole screw. They're different style screws. They kind of have almost a washer type head to them that's going to catch on that little guard. You want to make sure though when you're drilling this in that you're very careful, because you can blow right through that cut easily and then you destroy that pocket hole. So it can get frustrating, but just take your time, go nice and easy. You can see I just make sure I don't bury that screw. Okay, so now I'm cutting the 2x4s for the frame. The plans are actually calling for 6 2x4s cut at 28.5 inches. Okay, while we're still cutting 2x4s, we're going to cut 5 of these small braces at 11.25 inches. Okay, now that I've made all the cuts for the frame, I'm going to stain it, and I'm using Classic Gray from Minwax. I really like this stain because it does a really good job of highlighting the grain. It kind of seems to leave the grain bare and then covers everything else in that gray. But you can paint it, stain it, leave it bare, whatever you want to do. Okay, we've stained all the lumber, so now I'm going to build the frame. And the plans call for the bottom rail to be 3 inches off the ground. So 2 of your scrap cuts from your 2x2s actually equals 3 inches. So what I like to do is use these as my marker. And these rails are actually pretty difficult to install. So before I drop a pocket hole screw in, I put a little bit of wood glue on the end, and then I sink a brad nail just to give it a little bit more support before I put that pocket screw in. The pocket holes, or I'm sorry, the pocket screws alone aren't going to be enough to support it. So back it up with wood glue and a couple of brad nails, and it'll be solid. Okay, so the second rail is 10.5 inches from the bottom rail. So I'm just cut 2 2x3s at 10.5 inches, and you can see now I put them on each end, and then I just pull that middle rail flush, and that puts me exactly 10.5 inches off the bottom rail. Same process. Drop a couple brad nails, a little bit of wood glue, and then sink the pocket screws after that. And that top rail just goes flush with the top of the 2x4. So the frame is complete. Now it's time to install the 1x12 shelves. There's going to be a bottom and a middle shelf. Well, it does require a lot of pocket holes to support these center shelves. What I like to do is put 2 pocket hole drills at the very end and then space them out about 6 to 10 inches all the way down each side. Apply the stain once you've made all the pocket hole cuts. Okay, you see what I'm doing here? I'm taking the time to actually stain the edges as well. I'll show you later why that's important. Yeah, the stain's applied, so now I'm just going to start sinking those pocket hole screws and attaching the cabinet. You can see I'm using a wood clamp to pull the shelf flush with the 2x2 so that I get a nice clean fit. And I'll show you later why I'm doing that also.
Okay, I'm going to break into the video here just to show you on the finished table the steps I just took. So you can see I was really taking my time to get this edge nice and flush. This is the 2x2 and this is the 1x12 shelf. And you really want a nice clean edge right here. It just gives it a really nice look. So there's a couple things I did. I used those clamps to help flush it up when I sink the pocket screws. And another thing I did that really helps out was on the 1x12 shelf, I stained the sides of it. I'll show you right here. I actually have a little bit of a rise, but because I took the time to stain the side of the 1x12, it's helping conceal that. If I didn't stain that, this would be exposed wood. It would just be the blonde wood right here, and you'd really be able to see it. It would stand out like a sore thumb. So it's worth it just to take your time to stain the side and then try to get this as flush as possible.
Okay, you can see now we're going to be installing our 5 2x4s that are cut at 11¼ inches, 3 along the top and then 1 on each side of that bottom shelf. Okay, we're in the home stretch. We're going to grab the 2x6s, cut them at 74½ inches, and then use some 2½-inch wood screws to sink them to the table. So I'm actually going to sand the top a little bit. You do not have to do this. You could just leave that top bare. You could paint it or stain it at this point. But I'm going to come through with a 40 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to age this lumber a little bit. I have lots of techniques that I use to truly antique the lumber. I'm not going to go crazy with this one, but I am going to really round off the edges. I'm going to sand a couple gouge marks in the middle of it, things like that with that 40 grit. And then as soon as I finish doing that, I'm going to come back through with like a 180, a 120, 180 sandpaper, and then just smooth it all out. Go back over those same gouge marks and things and smooth everything out. Now it's ready for the top coat of whatever you choose. Okay, the last step, the signature piece of this farm table are these X brackets at the end of it. They don't provide any support function, they're just decorative. As long as you followed all the dimensions properly, they'll just slide right in. A little bit of wood glue and some brad nails, and you're done. Okay, we're done. I hope you're able to duplicate this table by following the steps in the video here. Hopefully it was helpful. If I missed something, just shoot me a message, let me know. I'll see what I can do to straighten it out. And if you see anything else on Pinterest, Etsy, whatever that you need to know how to build, shoot me another message and I'll do my best to duplicate it. I'll see if I can throw a video together on that one and put it up. So thanks for watching. Please like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to my channel. Take care.